Okay, I guess we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to Victory Condition Gaming. My name is Doug. Joining me tonight is Sam. I hope I don't butcher the. Is it Sleney?
It is actually.
Oh, nice! I got it on the first try.
Nobody in England pronounces that correctly, but well done.
Excellent. Sam is part of the team behind SINS The Roleplaying Game, which is currently on Kickstarter. And if you haven't checked out SINS The Roleplaying Game, I put a link in the description of this video, so please check that out. It's doing phenomenal success on there, and it just as soon as it got listed on, as soon as it was listed on Kickstarter, I saw it and I immediately had to back it because it just drew me right in, and I love it. And so I'm so pleased to have Sam on. Sam, welcome. Welcome. Uh-oh.
Hello?
Oh no.
Oh, what's an uh-oh?
Oh, there we go. My sound, I had an audio issue, which is fine. So Sam, thanks for coming on tonight. I know it's kind of late there where you're at, so I really appreciate you staying up late and doing this little chat with us, and hopefully we can share SINS with more folks.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's been a pleasure chatting. SINS, if anyone doesn't know, so something I'll get out of the way. The elevator pitch for it. SINS is a supernatural post-apocalyptic role-playing game where players take on the roles of either regular human survivors, or they can take on the roles of Nemissaries, who are reborn individuals back from the dead with this whole wealth of supernatural powers at their disposal to take on this cunning, dark, and eldritch hive-mind of the undead that have taken over what is left of Earth. It's not an Earth that we would really recognize. The world that fell was of
Sam, I'm sorry, I'm having some audio issues.
Oh, are you?
Oh, no.
All good?
Wait just a second.
Let me know when we're good.
Yep.
Reborn individuals back from the dead with it.
Right.
To take on this cunning, dark, and eldritch hive mind.
Well, that's not. I've got like this echo, and I don't know why that is. Okay, there we go. Let's try this out. Sam, are you there?
Hello?
No.
Can you hear me? Hello, Doug?
Shoot. Wait just a second.
Can you hear me?
Sam?
Hello, Doug?
No, I get this huge echo that I tell you, this is not good.
Could it be on my end?
No, it's definitely on my end. It cuts in and out. Okay, I think I'm good now. Okay, Sam, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sorry. So you explained what SINS what SINS is all about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry about that. Let's talk a little bit about your gaming. How did you before we get too far into Sins, let's talk about you and gaming in general. Like, how have you always been an RPG player? Have you, is this something you did growing up, or?
So I initially got into, as weird as it sounds, I initially got into role-playing games through SINS. It was about 6, going on 7 years ago now. I was 14, I was about 13, 14. And so me and some friends decided to go down to our local game shop just to check it out, because we, as most people do, have this pop culture understanding of what Dungeons and Dragons is. It's on the peripheries of like everybody's, they know it's out there kind of thing. And we thought we'd check it out. We were inclined towards like board games and video games, but we'd never done actual role playing. So we decided to go check out our local board games and role playing shop, which was Patriot Games in Sheffield. And so we went down there to see what it was all about. And was like, can we play role playing games? And they said to us, yeah, we'll hook you up with a group. And so it was me and a friend of mine, Ash, and we went down. And they hooked us up with this group, this guy called Michael. And 14. And he said to us, you can play a role-playing game with me. What would you like to play? And so we had no frame of reference, and we said, well, whatever. And he said to us, well, there's this idea that I've been, working on. If you don't know anything about role-playing games, I'd love to sort of try it out with you as a test kind of thing. And we were, with no other frame of reference, said, yeah, great. Let's give it a go. And that was SINS. It was a very formative idea, and it was very embryonic at the time. It was a loose concept that was described to us in the back room of a game shop. It wasn't printed on anything back then. And it all came out of Mike's head, and we all thought, yeah, that's really cool. And we started playing it, and it was probably a lot different to how most people start playing role-playing games, because as we were playing, there was a lot of, so what did you think to that idea? Was that cool? And we'd feed back and be like, well, that was cool, but maybe we could be like this, or yeah, that was really cool bit. I'd like to see that explored more. And so we kind of built our first role-playing game, and that was SINS. Since then, we finished that campaign because it had a very finite run. Because looking back on it now, I realize that we were very much me and my friend were probably used as alpha testers, so to speak. And so once that run was done, we were just like, oh, well, let's play some other established systems, and we were down for that, and we expanded our frame of knowledge through that. I went on to become the chair of a role-playing society at my university, and whilst there, I ran 2 games a week for the best part of 3 years. So, and during that time, I played numerous systems, and ones that I didn't get to play, I devoured from cover to cover. And thought up so many campaigns that never saw the light of day, as any GM does. And all the whilst I was doing that, I was always comparing it back to that old idea that originally got me into role playing games. Comparing it to SINS, like, oh, how does SINS shape up to this? How do these things? What do they do better than SINS? Or what can SINS do that emulates them? And all the whilst the team were working on bringing it to completion. And so my story of how I got into role-playing games is, it sounds like a plug, but it's not. It's really tied in with this as a whole. I'm not one of those people who says like, oh yeah, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and then years later I realized that I wanted to do my own thing. Because
sure.
For me, it was very much a case of we were doing my role playing group with Mike and the guys down at Patriot Games were were all doing their own things with their own games, and SINS in particular stuck out from those. Nice. So it was very tied in with my formative role-playing years, and it will always hold a special part in like my heart for role-playing games. Nice. Particular shout out to Warhammer Fantasy 2nd Edition. That was the game. That was the game that we played straight after we were done with SINS, and that was what really set the fire for me, because I love Warhammer.
Nice. Okay.
Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing 2nd Edition was what really set the inferno going for me in regards to how much I loved role-playing games. It was so good because everyone you played was so terrible. It's like, oh, you want to be a hero? No, you're not. You're a peasant with no teeth. And that's you. It's terrible. You're probably going to die of the plague. Excellent.
Nice.
No, I love that game. That would be my shout out to what really set the fire going. If it wasn't SINS.
Very cool. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about the setting. I had some audio issues early on, so forgive me if you've already kind of gone into a little bit. But let's talk about the setting. The setting really drew me in as soon as I saw it on the Kickstarter. It's post-apocalyptic. I love post-apocalyptic games. Let's talk about that. It's like set in the future, but humanity is pretty much wiped out. Why don't you might be able to explain it a little bit better.
Okay. So the world of SINS, the fallen world of SINS, is the world of the 22nd century. The world of SINS falls about 50 years or so from where we are currently.
Okay.
It falls. The date in the lore is a little misty, as you know, in a post-apocalyptic world, dates do get misty because people forget what calendars are generally. They have to think about where their water and food are coming from, as opposed to what day of the week it is.
Sure.
So the world that has fallen was that of a much more advanced one. It had something called the Second Renaissance, which was a real advancement and step forward in technology and GM farming and keeping birth rates steady and eradicating most diseases, started building an orbital elevator to the moon. The world was pretty good. And then it just, in its hubris, a disaster befalls it. And these jet black objects just suddenly appear in space and begin to fall to Earth. And as it would, a calamity descends upon the world, and everything goes to chaos, and everyone thinks that they're going to die in some horrific meteor shower. The truth is a little stranger, however, and these shards, they slow down once they're feet from the Earth in most cases, and just land quite calmly. And everyone is perplexed. Everyone was in chaos and thought that the world was really going to fall, and this was it. People started building shelters and such like. But these things that fall, these jet black objects that became known as the shards, they have the surface like obsidian, but they don't reflect light.
Sure.
They simply absorb it. They become a great point of mystery in this chaotic world, and people are baffled by them. Science cannot figure them out or analyze them in any way, shape, or form. They are truly alien. And whilst that's going on, there's rumors spreading that the dead are rising. SINS is not a universe where zombie fiction hasn't existed. So the rumors start spreading that the dead are rising, and everyone's dismissing it, and they're saying, "Nah, that's not happening. These shards are strange, but surely the dead aren't rising." And nobody pays heed to that until it's too late, and the dead are rising en masse, and they're not George Romero's Shamblers. These are fast, thinking, cunning, running 28 days later style, really brutal.
Nice.
Risen dead. And amidst all the chaos of people being perplexed at the shards and not knowing what's going on, and Earth being in general disarray, most of Earth's satellites and communications networks were knocked out when the shards initially fell. The world is really on its knees when the risen dead begin to attack. So humanity falls. It's not completely lost, however, and of course, as with most zombie fictions, you think, well, what about the military? An organized military offense would do all right in holding off zombies. Well, yes, it would in most cases. However, SINS isn't like most cases, and as the dead are rising, other strange rumors start to spread amongst those that can get word to one another that the dead are being controlled by these angelic figures. They all get given various code names, and there's some information about each one. There seems to be, it's unanimously, let's say unanimously agreed that there were 7 of these individuals worldwide that we know of, that people remember from the world before. And they can control the risen dead, and they can give them orders, and they can tell them how to do things that the risen dead shouldn't be able to do. What's more terrifying is that with the presence of the Reapers, the risen dead start to evolve. They start to feast on one another and grow bigger. They become pack-like. Alphas begin to emerge, and it all gets very scary very quickly, and humanity is really looking at the worst that can possibly happen. In regards to the fall, it's a case of what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, that happens. And the Reapers unite the brood, the risen dead, and lead them and just annihilate what was left of the world's military. In that chaos, one of the Reapers is killed. How it happens is down to the players reading into the book as to what really happened. There's a couple of connotations in there as to what went on, but it's largely agreed that something happened involving a nuke, and a nuclear bomb managed to kill a Reaper. Be that an accident, or the Reaper wasn't paying enough attention, it slipped through its defenses and kills the Reaper.
Nice.
Well, word of this spreads amongst world governments, and they think that nukes are the answer. And so Earth nukes itself. Large swathes of America, Russia, and China blow themselves up, trying to destroy these Reapers and trying to rid themselves of the brood. So what's left of the world, large parts of it become irradiated wastelands. And to make matters worse, the Reapers tend to walk out of these explosions completely unharmed. Whatever happened in China was probably a fluke, and the Reapers can shrug off even the best of Earth's weaponry. And so it is, and so it fades into the mists of time. That's when humanity falls. The Reapers kind of disappear off into the shadows, and it's very ambiguous in the core book, even from the straight up parts written for GMs, that we've left some ambiguity there as to where have the Reapers gone and what are they doing. We have some plans for them in the future, and we know what some of them are doing, but we leave it to the players because they are the biggest threat in the world. And the fact that they're still out there adds an element of a very unknowable horror to the world, that the worst is still out there.
I love it. Yeah, it just kind of keeps the tension out there.
Yeah. And so they fade off, and the brood are now in charge. They are the number one predator, and they rule the roost of Earth and humanity. What's left of it is shattered and broken, and you have you have a more recognizable post-apocalyptic landscape that makes up the setting, the playing setting of SINS. It's a bleak, broken world, but there is hope in the Nemissaries.
And the Nemissaries are that's what the players that's who the players are, and they're actually brood that have come back.
Yeah,
and they have some sort of their humanity kind of restored.
Yeah, so people when they die, it's noted. An interesting thing about the brood in SINS are you don't necessarily have to have died by the hands of a zombie. A zombie doesn't have to bite you. You can rise up as a brood if you are simply dead. It's very, I believe Walking Dead has something similar. You don't have to be infected. You can simply rise back up afterwards if your body is not properly taken care of, so to speak. The Nemissaries are people who have died through whatever cause, and they spent some time, as all dead tend to in the world of SINS, as a brood, shambling around, being generally unpleasant, being zombies. But something in them, in their willpower, in their nature, in their personality, says to them and speaks out and says, "No, this is not the end for me." Their soul breaks through and decides that their time is not yet done, and they fight back against the hive mind that grasps all of the brood. And breaking forth, they regain their human self. They become, in most aspects, living, breathing humans once more, with only shattered, shadowy memories of their time as brood. And once they're back, they feel the need or compulsion to seek out the shards, those rocks that initially fell. Something connects the Nemissaries and the shards intrinsically. As to what remains to be seen, but they seek them out, and when they do, they are judged, is how we refer to it in the book. And when a Nemissary is judged, they face all their previous sins of their past life. They are tested on who they are as a person, on their morality, on their fiber and their character. And when they emerge from that, they seem to have a grasp over particular sets of powers, or arietta, as they're referred to in the setting. And these are the closest things we have to traditional power trees or classes. SINS is a classless game. It doesn't have the traditional warrior, rogue, or whatever have you. It has the songs, and it has the creeds. And the creeds are what people's personality tend to align to in their judging. So people with aggressive or fighty or like zealous personalities might be the creed of the sword. We've posted a little bit about the creeds on our Kickstarter. We've covered all five of the covered all five as the updates, and they give you a really good picture as to what the ethos and mentality of each one is. So there's the creed of the sword, the creed of the tower, the creed of the mirror, the creed of the veil, and the creed of the mask. And all these cover personality types. And SINS at its heart is a game that combines role-playing with mechanics at a level so deep that it's impossible to ignore both. We've tried and tried to separate them apart and be like, can we run a game of SINS where nobody role plays? And granted, nobody wants to do that, but we had to try it to see if our system could, support both. And at its heart, no, because you had to give your characters some character for them to level up and to work, because your class is based on who your character is as a person. So these creeds, they tend to correspond to certain powers, although it's not set in stone. You can have people who have access to different powers with different personalities. The creeds are ethoses, and the Arietta are power trees. And these power trees are not your typical superhero array of skills and powers. They're a little darker and in keeping with a post-apocalyptic, bleak world. They're very much in line. They're things that a lot of fans of World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade have come forward and said, we like this.
Nice.
They're powers that fundamentally alter oneself in
Sure.
the best way possible. So the power trees are the Song of Bone, the Song of Flesh, the Song of Will, the Song of Blood, and the Song of which one haven't I mentioned? This looks bad on my part.
No, there's a lot to.
There we go.
Of, so.
The one that doesn't concern the self is the Song of Brood, which is the most interesting one. So the Song of Brood is an interesting one. We'll start with that one and work backwards.
Sure.
The Song of Brood allows Nemissaries to control the zombies in the setting, and I guess you could liken it to a necromancer. I guess would be the best way. It allows them to reach out into the hive mind that controls the brood and to have their own say and presence in that hive mind. And that's the only one that doesn't concern the self so much. Working back from that, and similar to that, you have the Song of Will. And people who are gifted with the Song of Will have the ability to control their perception of others. They have the power to read minds, alter their perception of time, alter their perception of space around them. And that one is very cerebral. It's a buffer of sorts, and but again, it's intrinsically linked to role playing because a lot of powers in the Song of Will are ones that allow you to tap into other people's personalities and learn about them as people, and then use that as you see fit. The next one, we'll move back again, the Song of Blood. So this one is best described as biomancy. It is the ability to manipulate the blood and biology of yourself and others. This one is for your poisoners, your tricksters, and occasionally, your thief-like characters to give it a traditional role-playing bent. It allows you to tap into your own biology and take on diseases and conditions in the world. Allows you to make your own. It allows you to alter the biology of others. It's very subtle. If used cleverly, it's an incredibly powerful power tree, and allows people to do some either truly devious things in regards to, say, making a common cold that is afflicting an area completely lethal. On the flip side, it could be used to cure the common cold in that area simply by utilizing the right immunities and biology. And you don't have to be, you don't have to have an in-depth medical knowledge as a player to be able to use the Song of Blood, because it does very much rely on some of the more eldritch and semi-magical elements that are present in the setting. The other ones, the Song of Bone, allows you to manipulate your own bone structure. Now, this one is best described probably. The best way I've described it to people is it's like the what's it called? The alchemy in Full Metal Alchemist. It allows you to shape and change your bone and protrude it and shape it in ways such as making a wrist blade come out of your wrist made of bone, or being able to protrude a shield from your forearm. It's very fantastical and it's very anime. It would be one way that I've seen it put. That one's for people who like to think on their feet in combat. People who don't want to just go, I swing the sword. These are for people who want to say, oh, I expel this or I shape this, and in turn it allows you to create weapons and create armor and tools out of bone. It's very interesting that Nemissaries can do that and raises a lot of questions in regards to what are they really, because the boundaries are beginning to be pushed out in regards to their normal human physiology. And finally, you have the Song of Flesh, which is your shapeshifters. It is the advancement and improvement of your own physical body. So people who are gifted with the Song of Flesh can, as we just said, shapeshift, or they can improve their musculature. They can make their skin completely bulletproof. They can create homunculuses. They can work in tandem with the Song of Bone to create new life at higher levels. They're pushing the boundaries out of what is an emissary, because it's quite clearly no longer human. And all these power trees they're dark, but they're not all visceral or horrific. They're very much akin to the video game Prototype, as a good comparison.
Okay.
They relate to the human body, and they speak to the tones of SINS in regards to, sure, there are powers out there, but they're not all shiny and optimistic, and sometimes getting what you want and fighting the good fight might mean that you're having to fight dirty sometimes in regards to your powers.
Now, the other thing I like about the Nemissaries is that they have like this alter ego. They have like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of tribute called the Hollow.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'd love to. So the Hollow is something that tends to make itself known in an emissary's mind when after they've sought out the shard and after they've been judged. So after an emissary is being judged, they are presented with their creed. Now, this is something that we've provided the rules for mechanically. You can run someone through a judgment mechanically. If you want to start off a game of SINS playing human characters who die and then are reborn, then we have included all the rules in the core rulebook for you to do so. But then also, if you want to start the game as just regular Nemissaries with the creeds all established from the get-go, you can. So when an emissary gets their creed, they also tend to take on something darker, their hollow. And their hollow is a manifestation in their mind, right at the forefront of everything that they dislike. If their creed embodies everything that makes them who they are in a positive, heroic light, then their hollow represents everything that could in turn bring them back down. It's the element that everyone, no matter who, our favorite heroes and figures from fiction and narratives, they all have their flaws, and if they don't, then that's probably a flaw in itself.
Sure.
So the hollow represents that flaw. It's a very upfront and very spelled out way of players having to acknowledge that everyone in a good, well-built narrative probably has something about them that they don't like. It could be that they're too prideful, they are too vain, or they're too petty. And the hollow represents this in the extreme. And in turn, it's there prying away, it's in their mind. And as the game advances, the way you advance is acting in accordance to your creed, as we spoke about before. So if you're playing, say, the town sheriff, he might be the creed of the tower, and keeping order and doing things that keep order would be how that character advances. However, someone like that, their hollow might be an aspect of them that really, really hates disorder and really hates chaos, perhaps to a violent level. So it could be that this sheriff is someone who will do the best he can to keep order, but if someone's out of line, he might take it too far and, just be a little overzealous with his law keeping. The Hollow would play on that and encourage that. And it is a manifestation of everything that a player not doesn't want to do, because when you're playing a role-playing game, you're always there like, oh, I could just kill this NPC.
Right.
That's the role that the Hollow serves in SINS. It gives mechanics and it gives presence and stage to those thoughts that everybody has. And in turn, you develop your character by leveling up your creed and advancing your creed by acting in accordance to your ethos. But on the flip side, your Hollow is working against that. Now, the way we encourage this to be done is that the GM usually plays everybody's Hollows, which is a massive task. So it can be deliberated, and groups should discuss it in regards to, does the GM keep tabs on what's everyone's Hollow like? Or you can do something like the player to your left plays your Hollow, and throughout the game they will encourage or whisper things to the player in an attempt to bring them down. They are your dark thoughts and everything that you dislike about yourself. They're your prideful, sharp comments that sting at the edges of your mind, or your vanity as things go on. And so the Hollow represents this dark alter ego that every Nemissary has. But in turn, the Hollow is part and parcel of them. It is part of their personality and they can't remove it. But it also provides a lot of their powers. So some powers, if they are violent or aggressive powers, will increase the strength of a Nemissary's Hollow. So it encourages a fine balance and a really integral mixture of, if you want to fight all day, all session, and be one of those characters who never speaks a line of dialogue or advances themselves in any meaningful way in an RPG, that's going to cost you, and your Hollow is going to get stronger and stronger, and eventually a Hollow can overtake a Nemissary. And that is one of the main ways that a Nemissary can get to true death, is they're taken over by the worst of them and they become monsters. They become hollowed monsters. And that's how that's one of the ways Nemissary players can be lost. So the game strikes up this fine balance of, you have to stay true to your ethos and to your character's moral codes, or just their ways of living and being, if you want to get by in the world, because there's always something looking to bring you down. You're an incredibly powerful individual, but there's something within you that is looking to bring about both your demise and the demise of everything that you love. And it puts players in what I think is a really good predicament of sorts, in that they're challenged by the characters that they're playing to really explore the full mentality and psychology of every character that they get into. And for some people, that's a little deep, but SINS is a narrative role-playing game that really prides itself on telling a good story. And the Hollows are part and parcel of that, because they represent a way that players can explore aspects of a character that they might not always want to focus on. Because, when we think about our favorite narratives and favorite heroes, you're thinking, wow, they're cool. And when their less than favorable moments come up, you're like, oh, that's a hardship. That's terrible that they're going through that. But it's part and parcel of a good narrative that you get the light and the dark, and that's what SINS is about a mixture of the difficulties that characters face on a personal level, also night and day, and in the same scope as those epic battles and amazing adventures that they have.
Sure. No, it sounds really, really interesting, and it was just spoke to me as soon as I looked it up and saw the Kickstarter. The art is amazing. Do you want to let's give your artist, it's Will Kirkby?
Yeah, Will Kirkby. He's done some work for Oni Press, Image Comics, and he's just been featured in the Critical Role art book, I believe.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. That's something that he just recently announced on his Twitter. You can find him on there if you just look up Will Kirkby on Twitter.
Yeah,
he frequents the same game shop as us in Sheffield. And when we were putting together SINS, it was a question of, there's a lot of really out there things in this world that can't always be expressed with just words alone. There's some weird visual stuff happening in this world that's tinged with the occult and the eldritch, and you have these bleak, shadowy, post-apocalyptic wastelands with players running around with this substance called void glass, which is what the shards are made up of, and they're utilizing and using that in their gear and equipment, and people are dressing in strange ways, as they often do in post-apocalyptic settings, and we were like, heads were being scratched over how do we represent this. A lot of role-playing games, like they go to lengths to put themselves into the art, because whilst role players all have great imaginations, one and all, everyone always perceives words differently. That's just something about descriptions. And we had, at times, Mike, the brains behind a lot of the ideas for SINS, had very distinct ways of how things should look and function. And his work alongside Will, there's so many sketch drawings out there in the drawers of the SINS offices of, this is the way that this should look, and Will really brought that to life in a very unique style that's frequently compared to Mike Mignola, like uses heavy shadow and line work, but it really brings SINS to life in a way that I think we would have struggled to find in other artists. He has a very unique style, and people said to me in the run up to SINS going live on Kickstarter, like, this artwork will really take this to another level because you're doing something different. And granted, some people, it's not for some people. They say this doesn't belong in a role-playing game, and they're entitled to that opinion. But I think that we're doing something different in the direction and the aesthetic and feel of SINS. To me, the way that the book presents itself stylistically was really important, because I have absolute faith in the mechanics. As I said to you just prior to the stream starting, I'm not the mechanics man of the team. I'm very much the fluff and the lore guy. But the stylistic presentation of the book has been really key to balancing out all the crunch, because sometimes you get an RPG that's just a tome. It's an absolute phone book of crunch, and it can put players off. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have some games that are all style and very little substance, and sometimes that's not enough for some players. I know that I can't really get into a game that doesn't give me enough to sink my teeth into mechanically. Right. So striking this balance of style with substance was important for the genesis of SINS and the way that we approached it. And Will's art is really integral to that, and I'm really looking forward to working with him.
I think it was a perfect combination
pieces of art.
Yeah, no, I loved it. As soon as I saw it, I said, "Wow, this is a great combination of the theme and the art." It was just, I thought it was great. I don't know how anybody might not like it, to be honest.
Yeah. I've just I say recently, I completed it a good few years ago. Used a lot of the the elements from the SINS art and wrote a comic that explains the world of SINS from the most base entry level point of view. It tells the story of a young Nemissary waking up and saying, "Look, this is the way the world works now, and this is how things are." And it's just a short 16-part, 16-page comic that we'll be posting up on the Kickstarter as one of those few things that really get things going in the last few days to the Kickstarter ending. So people can check out more of the art in that. And the book itself, I know our Kickstarter is really utilizes the art a lot. That was important to us when we were designing the Kickstarter page. But the book itself contains so many pieces of art. It contains at least 12 like full A4 pieces as a sidebar to each chapter. And we'll be looking at having those available as prints once the full web store is live. Because when we went to the UK Games Expo earlier this year and we set up a small stall for SINS, we had a bit of an issue getting our materials down to the expo, and all we had was the prints. And so rather than like a tablecloth or anything like that, I just covered the table in the prints, those that we had, and people were coming up to us, "Oh, can we buy this?" And I was having to say, like, "No, you can't. You'll reveal the bare table underneath. You will literally be buying our table here." So I think there's definitely a demand. There's definitely a demand for the artwork. So we're looking to deliver that. It's really nice.
And I gotta say that, like, UK Games Expo, there's been a lot of stuff that hit Kickstarter lately that has just taken off, that originally debuted at the UK Game Expo, that I need to get over there and see next year, because, man, I want to know all this stuff before it hits Kickstarter now.
Yeah.
You guys got a great show going on over there.
Yeah, our story there is another rags to riches one in regards to, so that took place, I think it was on the 5th of July. I found out that we would have a presence there on the 20th of June, I think it was. I had about 2 weeks to prepare. I was told by Paul, who's one of the members of our team who manages the business and contact side of things. He said, "Look, there's a small table on the edge of like right on the edge, alongside Patriot Games, the Sheffield game store had a presence there. And it's like they've got a bit of space on the edges of their area, and you can have like a small table if you want it." And I was like, "Yeah, excellent. Absolutely. Now is the time." An opportunity like this won't present itself at least for another year. And so I was like, "Yep, I'll do it. I will rise to the challenge." So I spent 2 years, 2 years, it felt like it, 2 weeks just sitting at my desk, making sure that SINS was up to scratch and ready. And I had it in my mind, it's like, if some big names in the industry come knocking and asking what this is, would I feel that it's ready to hand to them? And that was the ethos I worked on. And I think that's really like the whole team, even if it was unspoken, had that in their minds all throughout the development process. And that's what's taken us to where we are in regards to the success of the Kickstarter, because we just gave it our all. And even though we were completely unannounced, you won't find SINS in any of the flyers or material for the UK Games Expo, unfortunately, because we were just there on the fringes. Like, we didn't even know we were going to be here until 2 weeks ago. We just went, we gave it our best, and I handed out over 400 like flyer poster prints, featuring some of Will's art that day. And as I said, several people offered to buy the prints from our stall. A couple of guys, we took one test print copy down with us, and I had a few offers to buy that offers, and it's like, I can't sell you the one thing that we've brought with us, otherwise our presence here is done.
Right.
But no, it was really humbling to have that level of attention, because prior to that weekend of the expo, SINS was an idea shared between, I want to say, 10, 15 people at best that frequented the game shop, and now we're up to 500 backers on Kickstarter, and it blows my mind every time I look at it that people all over the world will get their hands on this.
Absolutely.
When it's so small.
And it funded in 7 hours.
It did, yes.
That's crazy.
So we initially put that up. I remember working for the 48 hours prior to the Kickstarter going live. I just locked myself in to my desk and was like, how do I get this page up to an industry standard as if we were big wigs already? And so I dolled up the Kickstarter page, and I said to myself the night before it going up, it lives or dies by this page, and if it doesn't fund, we gave it our all, and I know that we can still distribute some copies to friends and families and various interested parties, and we can say we did it, we gave it a shot. And so we put it up, and me, Jim, and Paul, who were the guys managing the Kickstarter, all said to each other, right, let's take a breather. I'm going to take the day because I've just sat at my desk. My legs don't work anymore for the past 2 days, and I'm just going to take a breather, and we'll see how it does. It'll probably climb slowly to its goal, if it climbs at all. We'll get there eventually, as these things do. And I went out for the day, and a couple of hours later, I got a message from a friend saying, "You've just passed 3K," and my heart skipped, because I was like, I thought I'd said to my friend the night previously, "Oh, if we do 500 in a day, I would be really happy about that. That would be a good sign that it's doing all right." And in truth, we hit funding before dinner time that same day.
That's amazing.
Word spread, and people were sharing it all over Twitter and Facebook and saying, "Check this out! This looks really cool." So we all had our minds blown by that, and we were admittedly caught off guard by it, because we had got work planned and we'd got projects planned, and the Kickstarter stretch goals, we'd got those in folders on our computers and whatnot, and we thought, oh, they'll see the light of day in a couple of weeks or so. And in truth, we had to all dash back home to our computers and offices to get those ready to go up that night. I think they ended up going up the morning after, because we were all completely beat by the whole process. It really sucker punched us with success.
That's great.
It was really good. I was thoroughly impressed by the power of the internet for the first time in my millennial life, and how quick that idea and the product spread amongst people. Because I was like, I was thinking to myself, there's not that many people on the internet that talk about role-playing games openly. Surely, everyone hides it like I do, right? And
No,
it turns out no, they don't. They love talking about it, and that's
absolutely
great.
Now there's a huge community. Do you have a SINS G Plus page at all yet?
I set one up, but I was stumped. We've got a Twitter. I manage the Twitter and Facebook, and I've set up a Google Plus for SINS. I will sign into it, and I will touch it up.
Nice.
Either after this Q&A, or I will get onto that first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that seems to be really the big thing with a lot of popular RPGs right now.
Yeah, there's our one review for all the praise that people are throwing at SINS. We sent out back just after we'd done the UK Games Expo. We had the UK Games Expo got us 40, 50 followers on Twitter who were our initial first outside fans, so to speak, the the people that we didn't personally know.
Mm-hmm,
And I put a thing up on the Twitter saying, if you write or make videos for any kind of like review outlet, contact us and we'll provide you with a watermarked review copy, and we just give you that for the exposure. And so there was a flood of people saying, "Oh, I write for such and such," or "I make videos for such and such," and we have copies. And so I was like, "Oh, excellent! This is amazing! So many people are like really interested in what this is. This is mind blowing." And I sent them out, and as is the way of things, reviewers lead busy lives. Not very many of them got back to us, but one guy did. He goes by the name of Nefarious Hawk, and he wrote a review for SINS, and he gave it, I think it was a 43 out of 50.
Wow, that's really good.
It was really high praise, and he really went in. He said to me that he spent like a week on holiday just reading it, and said that it was good, it was robust, and that it had what it took, which was really, really flattering to see and to read that other people thought that this was a great idea as well, because it was the first time that had really happened beyond people passing the stall at the expo and saying, "This looks great." It was a realization that someone had read it more or less cover to cover and still maintained the thought that this not only looks good but reads good and would play good as well.
Nice.
I will post that. I will retweet that review on the SINS Twitter once this Q&A is done, so people can take a look at that.
Excellent.
So it gives you a good feel for the game.
Sure. And speaking of playing well, we haven't even covered the mechanics. Let's talk. We'll just kind of briefly gloss over. It uses a unique engine called the Hope engine.
That's correct. Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that? I really like that. When I was reading up on it on the Kickstarter page, I really like I like D6 dice pool systems anyway, so it really kind of sucked me in.
Yeah. So it uses D6 dice pools. Now I know a lot of people from certain games will be saying, "Oh, I don't like rolling like 30 D6s," and that's understandable. Everyone likes a nice palm full, like a handful of dice to roll. It's nice and satisfying, but you don't want to be like rolling cups full of the stuff. And so SINS uses its own dice engine where you never really roll more than like 10 dice. In some situations you could, but you'd have to be a very high level character, and you'd have to be really pushing and utilizing and calling on various traits and qualities to get those extra dice. But the core mechanic is small dice pools, and those dice pools, the results in those dice pools are checked against required levels of success that you need, determined by your skills. So the amount of dice that you roll, I'm realizing now this is a hard one to explain without any visuals. But so at the top of your character sheet, you have your attributes, and these are body, conviction, cunning, prowess, reason, and passion. And so they're like your strength, dex, charisma, things that people know, love, and recognize. And these are rated 1 through to 6, or technically 0 through to 6, if you were truly lame in one of those aspects. And that rating in that attribute is how many dice you roll for a relevant action. So let's say the example that I used at the expo, a favorite of mine, and almost infamous because everyone on the stalls around me was sick of hearing it by the time the weekend was over. So the example I give is you're running down an alleyway and you have to jump over a fence. SINS is a fluid system, so the GM would ask the player in question, "How are you going to jump over that fence?" And the player might say, "I just used my pure strength to haul myself over it." Or they might say, "Oh, I used my grace and and my prowess to do some gymnastics over it, perhaps.
Sure.
The player states how they're going to address or deal with the task at hand. Then the GM governs the necessary skills. So they would say, let's say the character goes with, I'm going to haul myself over it with my pure strength. And so the GM would say, roll the amount of dice that you have in body, because it's a body-related check, and compare it against the skill rating required from your athletics. Now, let's say this character was of above average fitness. They had a body rating of 5. They're a pretty fit individual. And their athletics rating, so skills are rated on 1 through to 4. So 1 being you need 6s up to count as successes in those dice pools. 2s count as 5-ups, so on and so forth. So they would roll the amount of dice required. So they roll as many dice as they have in body for a body athletics check and compare it to the skill rating required by their athletics skill. And that is the core mechanic of SINS. And they count up their successes. So this guy's got an athletics rating of a 4-up. So he needs 4-ups to count as successes. And the GM says, it's a kind of a tall fence, so that's going to be a difficulty rating of 2. The player in question needs 2 successes to get over that fence. They would roll their pool of 5 dice, determined by their body rating of 5, and they would compare it to the amount required by their athletics skill. And you've got a ranking of 3 in your athletics skill, so you're going to need 4-ups, and all those 4-ups in that pool count as a success. And let's say this character got 3 successes. The GM only needed them to get 2. They've got this extra one. Now, in a lot of games, your extra dice or your cuts above, so to speak, they don't really do much. Say, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, you got a dice check of 15 and you get an 18. Those extra 2 don't tend to do much or contribute much in most cases. In SINS, if you get above the difficulty required, the extra points become something known as outcome. And this is where the game really shines as a cinematic and narrative engine. Outcome can then be used to do cool stuff or cooperative stuff. So that player could say, all right, so I used my 2 successes to get over that fence, and then with my extra success, I might turn and fire a shot at whatever's chasing me, or I might lend my extra success to helping another player over the fence who's running with me.
Yep.
And so it becomes a really cooperative engine that ties itself into what's going on at the story. Someone on the Kickstarter pointed out to us, they broke down the maths and said, well, your system is kind of easy. It's like, and I can't remember the exact figures they use, but they're like, oh, if you roll in 5 dice and you only need 4-ups to count as successes, you've got a high percentage chance of succeeding and just passing that test. And to that person, I believe we said that SINS at its heart isn't meant to be a hard game mechanically, because there's plenty else in the universe that pushes and tests people narratively and in regards to role-playing. The mechanics don't need to punish the players. They don't need to test the players because the world tests the players. And ultimately, you shouldn't feel like your stories stop because the dice didn't support you. If you fail an action, there should always be an outcome. Fate, as a system, has a really good little sidebar in it, which are words to live or die by as a GM, saying the worst thing you can do is to have a failed roll that means nothing happens. I'm very much
Totally agree with that.
If you fail a roll, it should open up a new path of something else happening. If you fail to pick a lock, then it shouldn't be that door doesn't open. It should be a case of, oh no, your lockpick broke, and
Right.
that was really valuable to you, and you should probably think about replacing that now. And that gives that character, they've come away from their failure with something else to work about and think about. Or let's say, for example, that person didn't make it up that fence in the example. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen? Is something going to catch them, or do they need to look for an alternative way around that fence now? It shouldn't just be, you don't get over the fence, and then the GM moves on to the next player or action or description. It should give the player something to think about when it's not their turn, and something to walk away with, narratively speaking. You shouldn't discourage your players from rolling out of fear of failure. You should encourage them to roll, damn the consequences, and really, really think about what's going to happen, whether they win or lose.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
So yeah, the system is mechanically, it does favor players a little, but we're telling the stories of heroes and protagonists and people that you root for because they're you, and we don't want the dice to say, no, you're not having a good day today. You determine that, and how you handle your problems is down to you, and not just like a set of mechanics.
No, I love it. I love narrative and story-driven RPGs, and that's definitely, like I said, it's just another reason why I was drawn to SINS just from the start.
Yeah,
I think
it's something that's integral to me as a GM, that a failure isn't just a no. It's a no, but then this happens.
But
yeah.
No, I like that. That's a good tip for any GM for any game, to be honest with you. No, but it should be in the back of your mind whenever you're running a game.
Yeah. Entirely.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about future plans. And then we'll talk about pledge levels. And I've kind of kept you over a little bit longer than I anticipated. I hope that that's okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm really
okay. Good.
As you know, before we started this stream, I was like, "Oh, yawning." And I was like, "No, but I'm enthusiastic. I will talk." And now I'm really invigorated.
No, nice. No, I just love sitting back and listening to you talk about it, because it's just I love this world that you've created, and I've always been one that likes sci-fi and post-apocalyptic, and to have someone create a world and have people get behind it, that's a great accomplishment in my mind. Like, that you guys have just done something really cool to me.
Yeah.
For me to, that's something that I think is really cool, that to world build and have people just kind of buy into that. That is just, that's a great thing.
Yeah, it is. Like it's been a real collaborative effort for SINS to come together. It's ultimately Mike, one of the team members. It's his SINS is his brainchild, so to speak, who stitched the ideas together, and then since then it's been a collaborative process of people feeding into it and creating it as a team effort. And I came along to it, as I said, when this stream started. Like, I came along to it, and SINS was my first RPG back when it was a collaborative and very embryonic starting out idea. Nice. And something like, it's important to note now that I find it really mind-blowing that I've helped build this world and where it's going, and now I'm in charge of like what happens with like its future directions and such. Something that the creator of Mega Man, Kenji Inafune, once said. Like, people used to come up to me and say like, "Oh, I'm like Mega Man's #1 fan," and he would turn around to them and say, "No, I'm Mega Man's #1 fan because I made him." And if you were his #1 fan, you would have thought of him first, which is real petty of the guy. But I'd like to think that I am SIN's #1 fan because I came to it as a fan initially, albeit an over-enthusiastic fan with a lot to say about it, but one nonetheless. And so it's really exciting to me to be taking it to new places. and having and holding that enthusiasm with other people who are like backing and supporting SINS is really invigorating. It's really cool to like talk about it to someone on the other side of the world when like 4 weeks ago the only people who knew about it were like just a couple of play testers. So this is really wild.
That's awesome.
Yeah, what was your second point on that question? I lost myself.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of rambled on a little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit about the future plans for the game. And so now that you've got this big success on Kickstarter, and in 7 days it's going to end. And what do you have planned out after the Kickstarter?
Okay, so there will be a post that really spells this out based on what the initial funding that we end with. Because the initial funding that we end with will determine a lot of things on the business side of things in regards to like how well and how efficiently we can ship, and how well we can cover like production costs, boring business sides of things. So we'll need those numbers first. But as a writer, as a writer and as someone who's like calling the shots on what we put out, our plan. The plan of like everyone on the team, me, Jim, Paul, Mike, and the others, is that we would do this. We would cater SINS in a way that we would like our role-playing games to be catered. So you'd have this core rulebook, which is what people are backing and getting behind on Kickstarter, and you don't need anything else. If you like minimalism or you like being frugal with your role-playing games, because it can be a rabbit hole of you buy one thing and then suddenly you've lost hundreds of pounds to all the splash books. So if you just want one book, this core rulebook, the core rulebook of SINS does everything for you. It's everything you need to play the game for years. And I have been playing it for and running it for years on this one book. And just a head full of ideas. You can do it. And so the future plan was you have this core rulebook, and then what we'll do is we'll slowly, if the Kickstarter was a success, we would work towards there being more books in the SINS series that advance the plot and advance the timeline a little for players who want to play in, say, different timelines and different settings, stages of the setting, so to speak, of SINS, because as we said at the start of the stream, things are bleak and things could get bleaker or they could get better based on the actions of the players. And so we'll write books that cater for those things and advance the story and reveal more of the world at large, because you could read the core rulebook from cover to cover and you'll still end it with questions, as any good book. And so we intend to answer those questions slowly but surely over the course of SINS, because leaving good mysteries is a key part of like any occult or supernatural piece of fiction. And so the business model, so to speak, even though there's very little business involved on what we receive from it, we will do free PDFs that expand the world in between these big installments that contain more mechanics. So to put it into perspective, what we have planned is, so we have this core rulebook that everyone's backing. When we hit 15K, we felt comfortable in announcing that we had the first of our mini splash books on the way, which is a book I'm writing called Manifest Destiny. And what that does is it expands on America of the SINS world. It looks at all the states, all the factions, and all the individuals of note that are operating and just generally being about in the world of in the America of the SINS world. And it mechanically, for people who are into the mechanics beyond just their fluff, it will add, it will preview, it will contain some small sections on vehicle rules, so it gets real Mad Maxy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, like customizing vehicles, because admittedly, that is something that's missing in the core rulebook. You can do it. All the frameworks are there for item degradation maintenance and such like are in the core rulebook, but there's nothing that specifically is cars or car parts, things like that. So Manifest Destiny will be really starting to add that, and it will also begin to bolster humans, because you can play as regular humans in Sins, but they're very much the bottom dog. There are terrible, nefarious powers at play in the world, and humans are having a pretty bad run of things. But Manifest Destiny will introduce factions and some artifacts and toys, so to speak, that really allow humans to stand shoulder to shoulder with Nemissaries and really give the Brood a run for their money. It will give them the factions that provide cooperation and allow them to work together. It will provide them with the artifacts to utilize and beat out some of the supernatural elements of the game. And it will provide them with some traits and qualities that allow human characters to really shine in ways similar to Nemissaries without all the occult powers, and mechanically function just as well. Whilst you could be playing a Nemissary with a whole wealth of supernatural powers at their disposal, in that same party there could be a human who is such a grizzled veteran and well-connected individual that they can give those superpowers a run for their money. It's adding your Batmans alongside your Supermans, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a book that focuses on that, and it's a love letter to all those strange and distorted interpretations and envisionings of America in post-apocalyptic fiction, because a lot, the bulk of post-apocalyptic fiction outside of the Metro series tends to focus on America. With Sins, it gives you a worldview. The core rulebook talks about the world at large, but I wanted to, when we were saying let's do small PDFs that expand the world, where should we expand first? And I thought America. We're going to have a large American player base. People want to know what's going on in their state, what's happened to America as a nation in this strange post-apocalypse. Hunter S. Thompson once said that myths and legends die hard in America because it's not a country given to superstition or legends, because it's simply not old enough as a country to have its own intrinsically.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was strange coming to it from a Sins point of view. What strange old powers are at play in America? And that was an interesting question as a writer. So I thought it would also be an interesting question for readers as well.
Sure.
And it's one that I really want to expand on. And in turn, we'll do Manifest Destiny. In time, we are currently, I'm proud to say, we are currently working on Sins, the second Sins book, which is the next installment. You don't need it. I must stress that you don't need it. You can buy it if you want to expand your Sins games.
Sure.
And that will be Sins of the Father, which will really blow wide open the human rules, vehicle rules, relics of the old world, and some story advancements as to what's going on and what is it that Nemissaries and humans are really dealing with in this strange hellscape of what we once knew as planet Earth. And then after that,
now, do you plan on going to Kickstarter with that, or is that going to be online?
No, that's I can't say. It's my safe answer for that one would say Kickstarter at the moment.
Sure.
Kickstarter is very much our fallback because it allows us to provide people with what they want, and the exact amount of people who want it will get it, and we don't waste, because we're very small.
Sure.
None of us have any prior industry connections or resources. We don't have our own printing press or anything like that. So all of our production things are done mostly like on the demand that we're provided with. So we would, as a safe bet, I would say that we would probably go with Kickstarter for that for now. But if our current Kickstarter continues to meet the same success, we could look at printing deals on the business back end of things.
Sure.
But I can't, as with the world of business, finance, and independent backing projects, I can't make any promises or maturities on those things. But they will happen. We will drag those books out ourselves if we have to, because we do it out of love, and we do it to provide people with ideas and books that they find cool.
Sure.
And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So now, if anybody has been listening to this and would like to contribute to your Kickstarter, do we want to run down just the pledges real quick?
Yeah, can do. Let me just pull that up in my other window so I can take a look at them, because I know that some of them have gone now. Some of them
sold
exceptionally quick. So obviously you can pledge £2 or more for the Brood tier, which gets your name credited in the final book as one of those fallen to the Brood. We've had a few people contribute to that one.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah, of course. And then above that, we have the Survivor tier at £10 or more. I believe that's around $9. I will cease to quote the dollar prices on
it fluctuates. It's all right.
It fluctuates. I wouldn't want to get them wrong and then someone hold me accountable for it. So I will speak in English money. So you pledge £10 or more, that's the Survivor tier. And for that, you receive a PDF copy of the SINS core rulebook with your name listed in the finished book.
And it's a great deal, because how big is the book as of right now?
300. I've got it right next to me, the one that will go to print. It is 357 pages.
That's incredible.
And it contains everything that you need to play to make characters, build worlds, world information for the whole globe, all the powers. There's just over 100. I believe there's 101 powers, unique powers. There's all the skills, traits, and qualities going into detail. It has everything you need to play. We don't plan on doing like a bestiary or anything separate like that. Everything you need is in there. And when we come up with more ideas, they will be freely available as PDFs. And when we advance the story and the world at large and add to the mechanics in a major way, that's when we will produce another like big release. Because we believe that's the fairest and best way of people getting the content that they want.
Now, my question for you, Sam, is how are you delivering the PDFs? Are you going through a website like Drive-Thru?
BackerKit is distributing our PDFs, I believe. So that will all be handled, and people will receive their PDFs. We're trying to keep the time between PDF distribution and physical book distribution down, so that anyone who wants a PDF isn't a massive advantage to people who are waiting on their physicals. We want everyone to try and get the product around the same time.
Sure.
So in regards to like the tiers that I was talking about, so on the Kickstarter, the one above £10, in the way that Kickstarter's format is laid out, the £20 or more tier, that's for retailers only, and this is something that we hit upon in thanks to Jim Freeman of Patriot Games in Sheffield, who was saying, I'm a big backer and fan of SINS, and he's helped make it happen. And as someone who owns a game shop, I would want to back this as a business as well as an individual, because I want to stock it and sell it. And through his industry know-how, he and Paul cooked up some plans for ways that retailers can back the SINS Kickstarter they put down a small deposit of £20 or $26. So for people who own brick and mortar, like game shops, they put down this deposit, and when the books are printed, we'll provide you with however many copies you want to then resell. Because games, at the end of the day, they live or die by their sales and how they spread through word of mouth. And if we're out there only selling our book online, then it's not going to go very far. And we want as many people as possible to enjoy this. So we're encouraging people to speak to their local game shop and say, hey, I really think SINS is cool, or you should probably stock this because it looks a little different to other things out there. And then in turn, those game shops get a cool new game to sell. And we also reward brick and mortar retailers as well. In that if they purchase X amount of copies from us, we'll throw in extra goodies that allow them to run demo sessions and have cool, unique stuff in their store, available in their store, that's not available to buy anywhere else. Because supporting game shops is an integral part of what we were doing, because SINS wouldn't be here without them, and nor would a lot of role-playing games. So it's just us, even us as an independent, giving back to those game shops that make this hobby possible.
Yep. No, I think that's great. I think a lot of stores, gaming stores, kind of have this negative mentality towards Kickstarter because it kind of bypasses them. So I'm glad that you have someone on your team, and your team in general is very supportive of that aspect of the industry. It's very very commendable.
It was something I was aware of because, like, some of my favorite RPGs have been Kickstarter ones. And I always felt a bit bad, like going to my local game store and being like, hey, can you get this in for me? Or can I run a game of this here? And it was something that they didn't sell or couldn't sell because Kickstarter was a separate outlet to them. So supporting them and working alongside them, we believe, is key. But that's not a play. Backing that is only available to people who own stores. And everyone who's backed those tiers, we've reached out to them and been like, do you have proof that you own a store, kind of thing, just to check that we can pass copies on to them at retail prices. So as for individuals go, the next tier up from the PDF is pledge £29 or more, and you get a softback copy of the SINS Core Rulebook with a bone white glossy cover. You get a copy of the PDF as well, and your name is listed in the finished product alongside all the previous tiers and above them as well. That's a pretty good deal. £29 for a softback book and a PDF. That's been quite a popular one. Easily our most... No, actually. So this is our second most popular one, the £40 or more. And this gets you the standard hardback SINS Core Rulebook, because hardback is part and parcel of most role-playing games. Most people's core books will be hardbacks. So for £40, you get the SINS hardback that I've got on my desk here. A very a rather dog-eared copy now, from how much I've had to revise it. And you get a copy of the SINS PDF as well in the £40 or more pledge, and your name is listed in the finished book as the chosen. Now, our most popular tier is £70 or more. It's beaten by one backer, so shout out to whoever that one backer is that makes it more popular than £40. Is the Nemissaries tier. That is a special edition copy of the SINS Core Rulebook with... I'm quite excited about this. I'm yet to show a picture of it. We're yet to show pictures of the covers because we're trying to hold out for the test prints to arrive because they will look better in person.
Make sure they come out right.
Yeah, because they use a matte plate with a spot varnish. So the SINS cover is all white, and it's got the skull in red at the side, and then it says SINS on the front. So for the £70 or more Nemissaries tier, that takes that same design, but rather than the skull being in red and the sins being in red, on a white background, it's a white background with the skull and the sins in off-white, which is then glossy and light reflective. So it's a very sort of like glossed out, very premium sort of look to it. And then when you flip it over on the back, rather than a blurb, there is a rather cryptic prophecy on the back that reads ominously like something that you would find in a creation myth that talks about the creeds and the Nemissaries, and will certainly raise some eyebrows in regards to how old is all of this Nemissary business and where exactly does it stem from. And that £70 pledge comes with that copy, that special copy of the hardback that I've just spoke about. It comes with a copy of the SINS GM screen, which I spent far too long putting together and looking at every GM screen I had access to and thinking and making lists of what do I find useful on a GM screen and what is extraneous, what do I never look at on a screen, and what am I always drawn to. And so I put together this GM screen of everything that I thought I would ever need. And I spoke to other GMs who had different GMing styles, different to my own. And we really brainstormed what I think is a real good multi-tool Swiss Army knife of a GM screen, that if you are behind that, you are in control and you have everything at your fingertips. It's got an event generator on it. It's got an NPC generator on it, alongside all the stats for all the weapons provided in the book, along with how players can use the various roles and abilities available to them at any given time. So if you as a GM are there and you're punishing your players, and you see that look of sorrow in a player's face because they realize that they're out of ideas, that GM screen will give you like a prompt of something that you can do to help your players out so that everyone keeps having a great time. And that screen has everything you need to know on it. And that tier, as with all the others, comes with a copy of the SINS PDF, and your name appears at the top of the tiers in the finished product as a Nemissary. That was the £70 tier. So the next one above that, this one has all gone. Oh no! There's actually there's one available. So someone has lowered their pledge. There's only 4 of these available, and they went very quickly. About it. Okay, so you get a special edition copy of the SINS Core Rulebook, which is a black-on-black spot UV gloss. So it's a black cover with a black skull, black font, but the font and the skull are in gloss again, much like the white-out copy, giving it a very nice light reflective feel. And then when you flip that one over, there is an even more cryptic and mysterious prophecy that is hidden, actually, in the core rulebook. It's strung out, but it's in there, but it's hidden. But it's there on the back of the fanciest version of SINS that you can get in full, that really raises some questions in regards to the creation myth and the ancient scripture that seems to be making itself known in the SINS universe. And you get that version of the book. You get a copy of the GM screen as well, as we previously talked about. And you also get the opportunity to liaison and work directly with me to have a character of your own design put into our next book and first supplement, SINS Manifest Destiny, as a major NPC. And that can be a goodie or a baddie. You can be a helper or an antagonist. It's really down to you, and I will work with backers for that tier on establishing like a character that fits into the SINS universe, but is fundamentally their character, and they get that character fully illustrated in the book as well by our artist Will, and they will get a print of the original artwork of their character as well. they'll get a copy of the SINS PDF, and because they're thinking up characters, we will send their PDFs out earlier than everyone else's. They will be pre-production copies. They're not receiving full version copies right away. They're not getting a leg up on anybody. They just have access to the fluff earlier, so they can think about the characters that they want to implement into the lore. So we're not saying, hey, come think of a character to put in the next book, and they're like, I don't really know what SINS is. It just seemed cool. So we're letting them have a look at the fluff a little earlier,
Nice.
So they can start thinking of an NPC to put in there. That, if they want to, they have the opportunity to have one of our writers GM a session of SINS for them. We'll talk to them in regards to where they live and how feasible that is. It is subject to travel costs and location. Because at the end of the day, we are doing this as a hobby as well. And whilst we do have access to transport, we can't go jet setting just to play role-playing games as much as we would love to. And that is... Oh, no, there is one more. There was one more, which was... which I've read it out of order. So this one was the £100 pledge tier. This one's all gone. You can no longer back this. Which is the black on black fancy copy of the book, along with the GM screen. You get a full A4 art card print of a full page piece from the book, signed by Will, a copy of the PDF, and your name above everyone else's in the tiers list. So that's a nice halfway point between, oh, I want something a bit fancier with the full works, but I don't quite fancy having everything just there. And there was only 7 of the Reaper tiers. That one there, the £100 one, in a nice thematic way. That one went on the day. I was really surprised by that, because I was like, this is a good idea, but surely no one will spend that much money on something they've never heard of. But it turns out that people really thought this was a good idea, and so I'm really amazed. I think it's really cool, and I thank those people deeply.
Like I said, I saw it immediately, and it just kind of caught my attention, and really, it just sucked me right in.
Yeah, and it's been a really amazing process that we've presented this idea, and people have said, this is amazing, I want this, because we never expected it to have gone off in the way that it has done. It's been really, really humbling, and we are deeply thankful for all the support that everyone is giving us and continues to give us.
Now, let's see. Before we sign out too much, let's see. There is a little bit of chat in the chat room. It says there was an Ashley McCannery.
McInerney, I know him. He should.
Yeah, he
What's he saying?
He said, SINS made me love role playing. 100% a great game for beginner or advanced players.
Yep, Ash is one of the guys who initially came to the shop in Sheffield way back when I first got into SINS. He was one of the first play testers on it, and he'd never played a role-playing game before. He didn't even read very widely or engage with a lot of sci-fi or fantasy stuff prior to SINS. But SINS really turned him.
That's great. That's a great, that somebody came on and just vouched for the game already. That's awesome.
Yeah. He's one of the play testers, so he's had his experience of SINS as a game. But prior to years back, it was SINS that turned him on to science fiction and fantasy and role playing in general. Prior to SINS, he didn't really have the time of day for role playing games. He was like, oh, I don't really get it. But now, whenever I see him, he's always asking me, "Oh, will you run a session of SINS or D&D for us?"
Isn't that great?
It's really cool.
When you introduce. I love when you introduce role playing to new players, and sometimes they don't really get into it, but then you find players that just really love it, like, and they instantly love it, and they just want to get their
they can't get enough
more.
of it. Yeah,
that's right.
It's really cool.
That's just a great. It's great when that happens.
Yep, and we've all been there. Like everyone's done it. You know, you and I will have done it when we first got into role playing games, and we couldn't get enough of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been very enlightening and eye opening to see how many people get into things as a gateway, I guess.
Sure. So I guess, yeah, we went over by quite a bit, but I hope that's okay. Like I said, is there anything else you want to add before we sign off tonight?
No, I guess just another thanks to everyone who has supported us and helped us make this seemed a far off idea become a reality, like a very real reality. It's crazy to think that by like Christmas time they could be printed copies of SINS all around the world. It's really,
that's very cool,
really amazing.
And I'm really excited to see this next 7 days, just to see, because like as we were saying before we came on live, you know, you always see an uptick at the end of Kickstarter campaigns. So I'm really excited to see where this ends for you guys. I think it's really going to explode these last couple days. Yeah.
I've got some content in the pipeline, some updates, and some announcements ready for like the last couple of days. Things that we've been holding off on because we weren't sure if we would do well enough to what's the word I'm looking for? You know, assure ourselves that we would have the backing and the fan base to commit to certain ideas. But now it's been shown that we do, then it's going to be really cool to get those ideas out and finally unveil them to people.
Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to see them, and I wish you much success, and I'm going to be looking forward to many things from you guys down the road. Please, anytime you guys have a project, let me know, and I'll be glad to put it out. You guys are doing something new.
Absolute pleasure. I've never done anything like this before, and you've been an excellent host, and it's been an absolute pleasure to just sit and chat about role-playing games.
I love it. I love talking with folks that just have like creative minds and come up with these ideas that like I would never even think of. So it's been a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, if anybody wants to follow follow SINS RPG on Facebook, you have a Facebook page.
Yeah, we've got a Facebook page. It has been admittedly a little quiet as of late because most of our updates have been going straight to the Kickstarter. One of the business models or release models we'll be taking in the future, something we've already discussed and made plans for, is we will be delivering content on a week-by-week basis on our social media. So if you're a GM and you've had a busy week, you've been caught a little bit short, your players are already eaten through all the material that you had planned for them, we will have new stuff that's not in our books up on our Facebook every week. It might just be like a new artifact or an adventure prompt or a new location, but it'll be there for you to implement into your games on a week-by-week basis once SINS is released.
Nice.
So you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter for general updates and those week-by-week supplements. You can find us on Spotify as well, because I don't believe that games should be a silent affair. And whenever I run games, I always use soundtracks, because you would notice if like a film didn't have any music in it. So on Spotify, I've compiled some fan-made mixtapes and playlists with artists and tracks that I think invoke the feel and the tone of SINS, and tracks that have like inspired some of the writing and future writing for SINS. So you can find that on Spotify as SINS Sounds. You'll find the link on the Kickstarter if you're struggling to find it, because I know Spotify is a devil to navigate. And we also have the Kickstarter. That's our predominant means of getting updates out there at the moment, because it's where our biggest audience is, obviously.
Sure.
And our most keenest fans are keeping an eye on the Kickstarter. So that's the one where we're posting the bulk of our updates. So you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Kickstarter, and Spotify. We have an Instagram as well, SINS_RPG, I believe it is. However, I haven't updated that in a while, simply because nobody wants Instagram pictures of just pages and pages of writing. It's not very engaging. But when we get some more art done for the future releases, once the art's finished, we'll be flooding the Instagram with the art, because we know it's a big part that people are a fan of. Some
Absolutely,
nice
that's exactly what I was
pretty
going to say.
pictures.
Throw up some of that Kirkby art.
Yeah, you can find him. You can find him on Twitter if you just search for Will Kirkby. He'll come up, and you can find me on Twitter as well if you just search my name. And I occasionally post my RPG thoughts on there. And I like keeping in touch with RPG news outlets and various figures, and people are also into the same things. So you can find me on there as well.
So I'll actually put the link to the Facebook page and the Twitter and Sam's Twitter. Put those on in the description of this video, so feel free to click on those once you've watched this video. And I think that's probably going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank Sam Sleney for coming on.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. I can't like I said, I can't wait to see what you guys do months and months down the road, even after this first book is out. So I'm excited for you guys.
And I look forward to unveiling the ideas to everybody.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for me. My name is Doug. This has been Victory Condition Gaming, because winning shouldn't be the only victory condition when you get to the table. We'll see you on the next video, folks. Thanks for watching.